Some great progress there. I think you're going to see it in the next couple of years in patient outcomes when those increased communication systems, better governing, better franchise agreement, and that will make a big difference for the region.
Turning to the more personal side of Julia Ratty, how have you been able to balance your time? You have a full-time job that's very demanding, and yet you as a public servant, there's also some demands put on you in that realm. So have you learned anything about yourself? Have you learned some new time management skills? To tell us a little bit about that.
I have the most detailed color-coded calendar that you have ever seen. It is a work of art for sure. It certainly there is that aspect of it where you're trying to, if you will, serve a couple of masters, and you've got your full-time job. And in my case, of course, I worked for the Girl Scouts of the USA. I was the CEO of the Girl Scouts Council here, and what really made it work for me is that it's more about it's more about making the world a better place. And so whether I'm sitting in the chair as a Sparks City Council member or I'm working with the Girl Scouts to help the young women advance their next community service project to make sure that we have the infrastructure that allows them to do that, it really is all about strengthening our community. And so I found that there were lots of places where those two roles blended nicely for me to just be out in the community and working on issues, and that might be as the CEO of the Girl Scouts or in my current role, or that might be as a city council member. And then there were other places where, it really was just a matter of making sure that the top priorities got the attention. And so I feel like I did a good job of keeping that balance and making sure that, the people, the voters who put me here got the responsiveness that they deserved from staff. They got my time and attention, and we got some things done.
What's your perspective on this notion of regional cooperation relationships between Sparks, Reno, Washoe County, and elsewhere?
I think we've made some great progress in some areas, and I think there's still some work to do in others. And I think anytime you get one of those really tough issues where not everybody gets what they were looking for out of the final decisions, sometimes that can be a setback. But I have a lot of faith in the people who step up to do these jobs, and I think that it's going to be fine.
Well, Councilwoman Ratty, thank you for your help and your service, and it's been a pleasure working alongside with you. You've done a remarkable job. You really have, and we're going to miss you, and we're very proud that we've had Julia Ratty, one of the few women, I want to add, that has had the privilege to serve on the Sparks City Council. So thank you for all
Thanks,
that you do.
I've really, really enjoyed my time as a city council member. It's not something I'll cherish for the rest of my life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes this installment of Spotlight on Sparks. Make sure you follow us on all our social media channels. From all of us at the City of Sparks, thanks for watching.
Emergency helicopters transport sick and injured patients daily. It is imperative that our patients and flight teams are able to complete their flights without encountering any drone activity. If we encounter a drone in the area of our operation, we'll be forced to alter our flight path, which could cause delay in patient care or, even worse, be unable to complete our mission. Even a small drone can cause serious damage, injury, and even death. If we experience a drone strike of any size, we are required to land immediately. We'll be unable to fly until the aircraft has been inspected. This would be detrimental to any patient on board our aircraft who is depending on rapid transport.
If you fly a drone, make sure you fly below 400 feet. Keep drone in line of sight at all times. Don't fly within 2 miles of any hospital because they have helipads that are frequently utilized by medical helicopters. Do not fly over any incident or scene where there are patients, EMS personnel, law enforcement, military, or fire crews.
Ground the drone immediately if you hear aircraft in your area, and check FAA guidelines and state laws before flying any drone.
Fly safe out there.
all stand for the invocation speaker, Pastor Pete Bossler from the Crosswinds Assembly of God. Is he here?
All right, Pete.
Pete's not here?
He is not here.
Well, gosh darn it, Pete, what happened? Okay. Well, let's have a moment of silence then for all those that are not here today or have passed away who have been fighting for our country. I think that's appropriate. So, a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Mr. Lawson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is public comment. I have some cards. If you want to speak under public comment, please fill out one of these cards. We'll give you 3 minutes. And first up is Anonymous. Come on up, please.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm speaking anonymously due to the retaliation we survivors of domestic violence are receiving. Just updating you on what has happened in the past 2 weeks regarding our legal causes of action of members of this board. And remember, the children will be suing. Statute of limitations is tolling for them. But when they are able to come forward legally in a court of law, some of them, that will be when they're 21, and that will be in 21 years for some of them. We are suing individually the council members because the state of Nevada is a comparative negligence state, and they have the right under the laws that comparative negligence, the council members have to prove, I'm sorry, this is a little loud, my peas are popping. The council members have to prove that the children were at fault for their evidence being destroyed. They have to have a 50%, 50.0001% chance that they were at fault for destroying their own court case files in which they were named to have suffered injuries. That's not going to happen. And so that's why the children are naming you individually, because you've had what the state calls a reasonable amount of time, 30 days, to either change your practice of destroying child abuse court case files, and you've chosen not to do that. An interesting phenomenon is happening in these cases. A nearby community has has chosen to put in charge of the children in that community whose child abuse case files are being destroyed. They have chosen to turn this over to their insurance agency, their excess liability carrier. You have chosen not to do that. When the excess liability carrier handles these kinds of claims, first the community that is handling this lawsuit by the children, the excess liability carrier works with a local insurance defense law firm. Well, that's going to be a conflict of interest for anyone in the state of Nevada who is, it's my 3 minutes, who is suing, who is defending these claims by the children, because all members of the State Bar of Nevada were aware in 2008 when members of the State Bar of Nevada sued the State Bar of Nevada, not members, but staff sued the State Bar of Nevada. The employees who sued signed affidavits that they were the ones who handled complaints about attorneys, that they were not given the resources to investigate the attorneys. Sir, may I have just 30 more seconds? Okay, thank you for your time.
And it's 3 minutes is the limit for everyone. We can go over a couple seconds or so, but 30 seconds, not so much. Thank you. Next, I have Terry Rondulet. You know, I've met you before, but I forgot how to pronounce your name, obviously. Did I get close?
Yes, that's it, Rondulet.
Good job. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, City Manager, council members. Yes, for the record, I am Terry Rondulet, and this is Madalena. We are board members for Restless Artists Theater at 295 20th Street, the west end of the Victorian Avenue corridor. And we would be honored for you and Mr. Mayberry of Ignite Sparks and Francine of Special Events to attend our production of David Mamet's November. We're pleased to extend to you complimentary admission to performances on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th in the month of November. Additionally, a guest who accompanies you will receive admission at the student rate. David Mamet wrote this new Oval Office satire, and it depicts one day in the life of a beleaguered American commander-in-chief. Approval ratings are down, the money's running out, the staff has thrown in the towel, and his wife has begun to prepare for her post-White House life. But incumbent Charles Smith isn't ready to give up just yet. With its main character and Mamet's style, he has made November a scathingly hilarious take on the state of America today and the lengths to which people will go to win. We ask only that you call 775-525-3074 with your name and number and of people in your party so that we can be sure to reserve seats for you on either that Thursday, Friday, or Saturday evening performance or the Sunday matinee. Thank you very much for your time.
Terry, give us that number again, please. You can shut the clock off, Teresa.
Yes, she'll pass some cards and the numbers will be on that. How's that?
Say it again, because, you know, we got 3-4 million people watching this.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to let her get the card and we'll double check to make sure that I didn't put a typo in my notes here.
So if you've not been to the theater, it's very small. This is called Intimate Theater or whatever, right?
It's an intimate setting. It's about 60 people. And awesome. So you're not on a proscenium stage, as it were. We're sometimes performing right at your feet. So, yeah.
Literally, yeah, that's...
What if we let the city clerk read the phone number? How's that?
Great. Go ahead.
The number is 775-525-3074.
Ooh, I did get it right in my notes.
Good job, Terry. Anyway, Francine and I and Julia Ratty went to the grand opening of this little theater. It's neat. You will love it. I guarantee you will love it. How much are tickets, Terry?
Typically they are $15 if you purchase them online at Brown Paper Tickets, okay, with discounts of $12 for student and military and seniors. If you come to the door, it's $20 at the performance date. But again, all of you, complimentary, please attend. Thank you so much.
You can go to Brown Ticket to find tickets for this? It's on here?
Brown Tickets link is on the little cards that you were handed, so that everything is easy and it's just, you know, one click away.
Sure. Do you guys have a Facebook page?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. So that's the way you're getting out the message, really, is by Facebook and
community
social media.
calendars.
Okay, good.
And
truly a wonderful experience this will be. I'm telling you, it's really fun and it's lighthearted and they're right there. Right, it's awesome.
And if I might add, there is a special drawing for everyone who purchased a regular price ticket, adult ticket, and that's going to happen. The drawing will be in the matinee performance of Explorers Club, and so it does have to do with that theme of Explorers Club, the actual surprise for the drawing. So that will also be in our promotional material in the future months. Again, I thank you all very, very much.
Wait a minute, don't try to run away. You got people want to ask
Oh
you
my
questions.
gosh, okay.
I want to say, I came later the day that you opened and was able to see the theater and get a tour, and super excited to have theater as we're looking at expanding our arts in the city of Sparks. So excited to meet Doug and some of the other people that afternoon. Your Facebook page, is it Restless Artists Theater? Because I know you went by RAT, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on Facebook, how would we find you? The whole name, Restless Artists
Right,
Theater.
right.
Okay. Perfect.
And also, we would be very appreciative if you found some place for us on your website. If there is any way in which you could just say, you know, the City of Sparks endorses and supports this.
Oh, I remember
theater.
on one of the drop-down menus, there was Shields and the Century. Yeah, that would be a great thing.
Adam.
Who do we speak to for that?
I don't know.
The web.
Well, he's the guy that can make this happen. We'll talk to him.
Okay, great. Thank you again.
So
Appreciate
thank
it.
you folks for coming to Sparks. First of all, this is really came at a great time because we're looking to get a better cultural base and do some things like this. We have nothing like it at all, and it's so exciting really to see someone doing something like this at Sparks. And I know you folks have a lot of fun.
Yes,
I mean,
we
it's
do.
not like you make a lot of money and get paid big dollars, right, like they do in New York City, but
And
you have a
we'll
lot
be
of fun.
looking forward to participating, like with the Pumpkin Palooza.
Sure,
We're a little bit
sure.
behind trying to get the theater up and going, but with some of the other Sparks activities that you'll have, you'll be looking forward to volunteering for some of those aspects as well.
You'll get there, and, you know, I advise the council, if you're gonna go down and get a complimentary ticket, give them $20 as a donation, or give them $50 as a donation. They can use the money. It's a great deal, I'm telling you, so.
Yes, we are a nonprofit. Thank
Yeah.
you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Terry. I appreciate it. Next is Ardina Perry. It's great. It's awesome.
Yeah, I know. For the record, Ardina Perry, City of Sparks. Gosh, the bad news is I'm here about feral cats. The good news is I'm not going to sue you. So I think that we need to come forward to the city with a little bit of respect and understand that we each come here doing what we're able to do at the time it's brought before us. And that's the attitude that I'd like to bring with me today. I did provide a handout to Teresa to put in the record because I have no idea where it came from, but somebody gave it to me and I thought it was very good and I wanted to share it with the council. What I want to address, this really is loud and usually you can't hear me. What I want to address today, I've been approached by some people in the Victorian RV Park and some people in the Marina Apartments, and because everybody knows I'm at the gym 7 days a week and I'm pretty high profile. I'm asking Sparks to consider what I see as Sparks' issue. When we talked about homeless, we said we had a homeless issue in Sparks, and we do. And my only contention with the way we handled that was I wanted to use our money in Sparks as opposed to going with Washoe. But I think that we can see these problems as they come up in Sparks, and while we can't do anything about how the county handles them, we can do something about how we handle them. Now, we had a situation with, God forbid, the feral cats a year or so ago, and Sparks was offered an option, if you will, of handling that through zoning. At that time, I don't think we had as much information as we have today. I'm terribly allergic. I sent in a public records request. Another person has sent in a public records request. We all saw Mindy here a couple of weeks ago, and she was pretty excited. The truth is these cats are not manageable being on commercial property and on public property. And people are calling the city. It's interesting that most of the complaints are coming from Ward 1, and I do believe that these people have contacted their council member. And what people are being told is that we're pretty helpless here. We can't do anything about it. It's a county issue. Well, no, we can't do anything about the ordinance. We can do something about whether or not we allow this to continue in Sparks. And so I think it's not really very fair to the citizens when we imply that we can't, because we can't. In the Victorian RV Park, the woman was, first she called Sparks Police and was told, call animal control. She called animal control and she was told to call NHS. They then began a protocol where she would have to prove that these, oops, I'm so sorry, that these cats were a nuisance. So again, we have the burden of proof, which isn't totally a bad thing. However, when I said, did anybody ever give permission for this land to be used to feed animals? And she goes, no, we've told them we want them off. Now, it sounds as though there is no solution, but there is a very easy solution. Instead of trying to prove that you didn't give permission, I'm up already? Okay. Please consider revisiting. Thanks.
Thanks, Ardina.
And I want to come to the theater.
Anyone else on public comment? Okay. Let's move on to 5.1, agenda, approval of the agenda for possible action. Anybody want to? No, that's not the right place to do it. Anyone want to take anything out of order?
Mr. Mayor.
We'll pull it when you get to it. Or you want to do it now?
I'd rather do it now.
So anybody want to pull anything, which is Mr. Driscoll, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to pull item 9.1. It is for the membership, annual membership dues for the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. It's come to light late last week that the state's Economic Development Office has asked EDON to pass through money and actually pay for a consultant to engage in the conversation related to effluent potentially going down the canyon to Story County and the Tri-Center. I have not been given a briefing by EDON what's going on. I did talk to the director today. He shared some information, but I've not received anything. I'm not comfortable. I feel as though even though the state passed the money through, that money goes to EDON and they use it for what they need. It feels almost like I'm paying them to negotiate against this council when this council doesn't have a negotiation position yet. So we're meeting with their consultant at the consultant's request. We'll know more, but until I have a better feel for exactly what's going on and whose money's being used how, I'm not comfortable renewing our membership, so I'd like to pull it. And then I'll bring it back when it's appropriate. I have no time certain at this time.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, I want to pull item 8.3. Steve's doing some research on that for me, and I'm going to need more information.
I have answers for you too.
So you want to hear it now then, or?
Well, then we'll pull it on consent items and hear the answers.
So you'll pull it, and if you're not satisfied, we can continue it. Okay.
Correct.
All right, may I have a motion, or anybody else? Can I get a motion then with the amendments, please?
Move to approve the agenda as modified.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Lawson, yeah, and seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve the agenda as amended. Any further questions? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, let's go to number 6. Consideration and possible approval of the minutes of the regular Sparks City Council meeting of October 10, 2016. Any omissions, deletions, or corrections? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
Move to approve.
To a second. Ms. Bybee.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve the minutes of October 10, 2016. Any further questions? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Before I move on, I just want to make one announcement. Mr. Schmidt, this will be his last regular meeting after, what, 15, 16 years are we talking about?
15 years, 7 months, 4 days.
But you're not done yet.
I'm not done yet. I still got one more. I still have to be here to open up another meeting, so
yeah.
I will be here.
He'll be back on the 14th of November after the elections to certify the election, and then he'll be stepping down. So, 15 plus years, as he said, pretty good career, done a great job for the city of Sparks, and we appreciate him, but we'll do a little better job on the 14th of ushering him out the door. So anyways, a little round of applause.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, and how could I forget? And it's his birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You want to lead us in the song?
Oh, you don't want me singing.
Happy
Trust me.
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ron. Happy birthday to you. And thank you, more. All right, thanks for indulging us in the song. I apologize for that, but we'll get over it too. So, 7.1 Proclamation Food Day is Leah Tauchin here, please. So, Leah, I'm going to read this, and then you're going to accept it, right? And then you have a few words to say. So, thank you. It's my day, Food Day. Yeah. Whereas Food Day is a national day to examine our food system and advocate for improved food policies. And whereas food is a basic human need and all residents of Sparks, Nevada should have access to nutritious, affordable, sustainable, regionally grown food. And whereas 15% of the population in Washoe County is food insecure and the 9 food deserts within the county result in families with limited access to food. And whereas our regional food system significantly affects the public health, economy, land use, quality of life, and future of our growing community. And whereas a strong regional food system which supports food production, processing, distribution, storage, and access while minimizing waste will conserve our natural resources and contribute to the environmental and economic health and prosperity of our region. And whereas the Sparks City Council has a vital role in ensuring that our regional food system is the most robust and equitable. And whereas the Sparks City Council is committed to supporting the efforts of the Washoe County Food Policy Council and considering healthy food access and a sustainable regional food system when making policy decisions and updating the future strategic plans, vision, values, goals, and objectives. Now, therefore, I, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim October 24, 2016 as Food Day in Sparks and encourage support for healthy food access in a sustainable regional food system. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Leah Taukin. I'm with the Retail Association of Nevada, but I also serve as the chair for the Washoe County Food Policy Council. And so for anyone that may not be familiar with us, we are a volunteer public-private partnership that brings together all aspects of the food system. And we network and collaborate and promote healthy food access. We were established by the Washoe County District Board of Health in 2011. And our mission is to support a vibrant, healthy, and equitable local food system. And our goal is really just to work towards reducing barriers for residents of our community that may not have access to healthy food. So we very much appreciate your recognition of National Food Day. It falls every year on the 4th Monday of October. And so today we actually just challenge everyone in the community to try to incorporate some healthy food into their diet. And really, this day is about examining and just taking the opportunity to examine our public policies as they relate to food. We would like Food Day to serve as the catalyst for taking action to solve food-related problems. And we would also like to offer the information that we have as a council if and when food issues do come up before your council. And we are, like I said, our overriding goal, really, we just want to strengthen the food system, make sure that it's sustainable, and make sure that we have a future, healthy future for the residents of Sparks. So very much appreciate it again. Thank you for your support.
Leah, thanks. Thanks for what you do for us. We appreciate it. So could we do this tomorrow instead of today? Because I've already had 2 meals that weren't too good. Okay, so you got to catch me in the morning, early. Exactly. She didn't see the candy, don't worry about it. All right, consent items. Anybody want to pull a consent item, Ed?
8.3.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Lawson.
I move to approve consent items 8.1, 8.2, 8.4, 5, and 6.
Have a second? Mr. Smith?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve consent items 8-1, 8-2, 8-4, 8-5, and 8-6. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
I'm trying. There we go.
Mr. Schmidt? Passes unanimously. Okay. 8.3, Mr. Lawson.
So Steve and I talked about our microphones are hot all the time now, which every other council dais I sit at has an off switch. Because I need an off switch. So I would like to see us in this upgrade to replace these mics so we have an off switch.
Okay, so good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Steve Davidic, for the record, IT Manager. As we're looking into that, and the answer I got after talking to our vendor is that the new system will have a mute switch on every microphone, and the City Clerk's office will have control to unmute, or you will, at all times.
Okay.
So that will be a part of this new
The new
system we're
system will
voting
have-
on.
yes.
It's included, I didn't see it included in the $94,000, but it is included.
I verified that that's how the system will work. I
Perfect.
contacted the vendor specifically with that question.
And there's a lot of people think I need an off switch, so that's
Yeah.
important. Okay, then if that's taken care of, then I'm happy with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then we can get an off switch for the microphones and for Ed, too?
That's not within my purview.
Okay. All right, well, I'll talk to his wife then. Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
All right, so I'll move to approve 8.3 as presented.
Have a second, Ms. Bybee?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lawson, seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve 8.3. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Steve. Okay, move on to 9.1, which has been pulled. 9.2, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the mayor's recommendation of 1 2-year term appointment to the Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee for the City of Sparks. And I have requested that we appoint Sarah Toney to this particular seat. Any questions, or is Tracy here, or Francine? If you have any questions, you can ask them. If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
I move to confirm the mayor's recommendation of Sarah Toney to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee.
Ms. Bybee.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve agenda item 9.2 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 9.3 is consideration and possible approval of the mayor's recommendation of an appointment to the Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee, EFAC, from the following pool of applicants, which is 1, Jeff Bean, and I'm recommending Jeff Bean.
Good choice.
I thought so.
Tough decision.
Yeah.
Questions or looking for a motion? Ms. Bybee.
I move to confirm the appointment of Jeff Bean to the Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee as recommended by Mayor Martini.
Second, Mr. Lawson.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Bybee, seconded by Mr. Lawson to approve 9.3 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, let's move on to public hearings. Number 10.1, public hearing, consideration and possible approval of a request from Triple L LLC to the City of Sparks to vacate a portion of 20th and 21st Streets north of C Street and south of Prater Way, and a portion of C Street between 20th and 21st Streets. Mr. Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. John Erickson, city engineer, for the record. As the mayor indicated, Triple L LLC is the owner of the property adjacent to the vacation of the right-of-way. I want to make one clarification on the exhibit. It's not, the address is incorrect. It's not 2100 Prater Way, it's 2001 Prater Way. A legal description for the requested right-of-way vacation has been reviewed by staff and has been found acceptable. Each owner of the property abutting of the proposed vacation has been properly notified via certified mail. The extent of the proposed vacation and date of this public hearing was published in the Reno Gazette Journal. There will be reservations of easements on the easterly side or the westerly side of 20th Street. Staff finds that the public will not be materially injured by the proposed right-of-way vacation and recommends approval. That's it.
Is that it? Questions for Mr. Erickson? Ms. Bybee?
John, the only question, it says it's for enhancements. Is that strictly the security fencing, or what's going to be happening on that
What has
land?
been mentioned to me is that to just make enhancements to their landscaping, and then they're proposing potentially putting a fence on the backside of the property adjacent to C Street. The veterinarian hospital's there, and so they wanted an area where they could control the animals when they come out the back of the building, so they're not running into the street.
On the C Street side there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, that was basically, I think the answer to my question there was just, that it just doesn't seem to add value to the property that they expanded or anything else like that, but they're just looking at, to add some stuff in the back?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Anyone want to speak to this particular item in the audience? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for action. This is a Ward 1 deal. We don't have a Ward 1 councilman, so if somebody want to step in, make a motion. Mr. Schmidt.
Mayor, I move to approve the request by Triple L LLC to the City of Sparks to vacate the right-of-way as outlined by staff.
Mr. Smith.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Smith to approve agenda item 10.1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Okay, planning and zoning public hearings. Let's move on to 11.1. Consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 3303, certifying the amendments to the Sparks Master Plan, now referred to as the Sparks Comprehensive Plan, including changing the land use designations, adopting new goals and policies, and removing the Northern Sparks Sphere of Influence Plan, the Transit-Oriented Development Master Plan, and the West Pyramid Plan, and other matters properly relating thereto. Ms. Go ahead. I'm
Good afternoon, Chair Martini and
Thanks.
Council. I'm Karen Melby,
Thanks, Karen.
Development Service Manager. This item before you today is to review and discuss the draft comprehensive plan, which was adopted by the Planning Commission on August 18th of this year. The proposed plan revises and replaces the existing elements of our master plan in our area plans. In light of the City Council's workshop held on September 19th, which covered the comprehensive plan in depth, my plan for today's presentation is to give you a brief overview of the comprehensive plan, summarizing the NRS requirements, public outreach process, the overview of the comprehensive plan document, and then discussion on the framework for the future topics and quickly review some of the maps in the document. This will allow the discussion to be directed by yourselves. The NRS, or Nevada Revised Statute, requires that a city of our size have a minimum of the following elements: a population, housing, conservation, and public facilities element. Beyond that, the city currently has a land use element, a circulation plan, parks and recreation plan, along with 3 area plans. As a brief background on the process for the adoption of the comprehensive plan, in September of 2015, the City Council approved a contract with RAD Strategies and Creative Cities for the community outreach process. The community outreach process kicked off at the Hometown Christmas Parade with the Vision Survey. The Vision Survey, or Phase 1, closed in February of 2016, which was followed by Phase 2, or the deep dive questions. This consisted of 2 questionnaires, and that was closed on June of 2016. Between the 2 surveys, there were a total of 2,591 surveys completed, which represents nearly 3% of the Sparks population. There were a total of 6 major events, 17 meetings and presentations, 22 champion and stakeholder meetings. The neighborhood meetings that are required by the NRS were held on July 26th and 27th. On August 18th, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing and adopted the comprehensive plan. On September 28th, the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission determined that the comprehensive plan is in conformance with the regional plan. The comprehensive plan will serve as a big picture policy document guiding the city to the year 2030. Rather than a planning consisting of solo elements, which is like our plan that we have now, this plan will integrate the typical master plan elements into 7 topics. The comprehensive plan is divided into 5 chapters. Chapter 1 is called Ignite Sparks. This chapter summarizes what is a comprehensive plan, compliance with the NRS and Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. It also summarizes the public outreach process. Chapter 2 is called Pathway to the Future. This chapter sets forth the vision statement and also identifies 5 challenges that the city will face as it grows. Chapter 3, entitled Sparks Today, addresses the elements of our conservation as required by NRS. That includes environmental, cultural resources, natural hazards, geological hazards, air quality, and renewable resources. Also in this chapter are the population and housing elements. It also discussed the economic along with the facilities and services that are provided by the city and services that are not administrated by the city. Chapter 4 is named Framework for the Future. This is actually the heart of the comprehensive plan and contains the goals and policies guiding the city. This chapter reflects the community's vision from the outreach process and has been organized into 7 topics, referred to collectively as a policy framework. This approach promotes this plan's vision holistically rather than through a collection of individual elements. The 7 topics are, the first one is managing growth. Under this topic is proposed 6 goals and 16 policies, which encourage mix of land use, facilitate infill and redevelopment along with reinvestment in our older parts of town, including the industrial area. It also proposes new policies for the review of master plan amendments, annexations, and projects within the sphere of influence by establishing review criteria. The second topic is connectivity. Under this one are proposed 3 goals and 9 policies, which are intended to ensure that the streets are improved in a multimodal fashion and continue to be as such. The policies promoted pedestrian-friendly, facilitating walking, transit ridership, and including and finishing maintaining our trails and pedestrian ways. The third topic is community facilities and services. This proposes 2 goals and 9 policies. It requires land use entitlements cannot be approved unless we have acceptable services can be provided, acceptable levels. Adoption of criteria for allocating potential excess sewer capacity, a process for elimination of city parks, strives for a 6-minute response time for the fire department at 85% of the city, calls for exploring the possibility of a satellite police office manned by civilian staff. The fourth topic is community character with 1 goal and 10 policies, proposed which assesses the possibility of creation of a historic district, increasing special events, encourages public art, and reducing the impacts from major road capacity projects on our neighborhoods. The fifth topic is housing and affordability and proposes 3 goals and 10 policies. It is intended to ensure the provision of sufficient zoned areas for infrastructure, public facilities, and services for housing, and promotes a variety of housing types, connecting housing to multimodal transit systems. It facilitates multi-generational housing, including housing options for seniors, and acknowledges that a strong and diverse housing market is important to the city's economy. The 6th topic is resiliency and conservation and consists of 4 goals and 25 policies. This topic targets conservation and protection of our water resources, addresses the concerns of increased drought and severe weather conditions, the cities to coordinate with other regional agencies to improve the regional air quality, explore increasing the urban tree canopy, protect our cultural resources and natural amenities, prepare for natural disasters, and evaluate the feasibility and options of a decentralized wastewater facility. The 7th and last topic is economic vitality. This last topic consists of 6 goals and 10 policies. It addresses the city's foremost economic responsibility is to assure that it is an appealing place to live, work, and do business, including providing municipal infrastructure, facilities, and services that are in an efficient and cost-effective basis. The last chapter in the comprehensive plan is titled Implementation and Measuring Success. It addresses all of the 121 goals and policies in a matrix used to designate the responsibility of a city or the agency for the implementation of that goal or policy, addresses the resources required to implement that policy or goal, and provides for a method to track the implementation and the effectiveness of the comprehensive plan. It is proposed that this would be done in an annual report to the Planning Commission and City Council. I wanted to show you the proposed land use map. As part of the comprehensive plan is the land use map. Our current land use map consists of 61 land use categories. We are reducing it down to 20 land use categories. An example is that we're going from 30, right now our adopted land use map has 36 residential categories. This map represents 6 residential categories. The consolidation also includes elimination of offices and consolidating that under commercial designation. This is to simplify the land use categories, and is anticipated that it will reduce the number of master plan amendments and will make the administration of our land use map easier. The next map I wanted to show you was our complete street map. This map designates the streets that the city, as a policy, would like to see developed as a complete street. This map also establishes the level or type of complete street. And the last map that I wanted to show you is our trails map. This map shows the existing and our proposed trail system within the city. The intent of this map is to make sure that we maintain these trails and also that we make the connections on the areas that are missing it right now. With the adoption of the comprehensive plan, 3 area plans will be eliminated. These include the Northern Sparks Sphere of Influence, the West Pyramid Area Plan, and the Transit-Oriented Development Master Plan. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Malby? Mr. Smith?
Karen, are we done with the TOD now completely? Or do we still have some sections in town that has a TOD?
The TOD is being incorporated into the comprehensive plan as a mixed-use district.
MUD.
So it's not being eliminated, it's been incorporated.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to bring it up, but Mr. Smith brought up the TOD. How do we handle conflicts in the TOD? What somebody thought they were going to get at one time with the TOD, now with this, is that all administrative review that could be handled? Or do we expect any conflicts and changes?
We transfer, the land use map is a direct translation of the existing land uses from the TOD maps onto this map. So if it was MUC, it's now MUD, MUC on this map.
Okay. So we should not expect any conflicts?
No,
okay.
There should not be any.
All right. I didn't think there was. First off, say good job to staff. I think, getting some of these housing categories down is a good thing. And, the same thing with the zoning, making it a little bit more simpler to see what we have and what we do. So I know Karen, you personally have a lot of work into this thing, so I thank you, and thank you to John and all of the staff that has spent time on it. It's a good document, and I think it's well worth taking a look at for moving forward with the city. So thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
I don't have any questions, just comments. Want to thank you and everyone who's worked on this incredibly long process, but well worth what you came up with for us to work with. I especially like the public input that we have, the surveys, the Ignite Sparks piece of it I think is critical, even though it was just 3% of the population on the surveys. With all your community meetings and other things, we did hear from the public, and I think that's important. So it's not just us thinking and staff thinking what we think Sparks should be, but listening to our residents and to our stakeholders in the city, I think is critical to us, drafting something that will be a plan that's workable for the people who live and work here. So I thank you for that work. I like the fact that you've streamlined things, reduced the number of different from the housing to it just is more streamlined and efficient, and just want to thank you for the work you put in on it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I don't know if anybody in the public want to speak to this particular item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for action. Mr. Smith.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I move to adopt resolution number 3303 to certify the comprehensive plan associated with PCN 16039, allowing staff to make administrative corrections as necessary when preparing the final comprehensive plan.
Ms. Bybee.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve 11.1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Great work, folks. This is a good, great document, and it's really cleaned up a lot of stuff we've been trying to do for a long time. Good. I'm sorry.
If the council would allow me, I think I just want to put a little bit of a spotlight on this project. This is something that we started talking about well before the recession in 2008-9, and with staff and council kind of keeping this in the forefront. And then last year with the council approving the dollars needed for the outside consulting and the help on this. This is a finished project. A lot of times governments are accused of not finishing projects that they put money towards. And so while the money that we spent was a small piece of the amount of effort that went into it with our staff specifically, your staff told you that they would get you a project done in a year, and they did that. They told you that it would make it easier, and they did that as well. And so the professionalism of all the staff is greatly appreciated on this. They needed your support, and they needed your policy direction. You gave that to them. You gave them an ability to bring you back a plan that you will now be very happy with. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Steve. Good work by everyone, really. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to 11.2. Second reading, public hearing, discussion, and possible action on bill number 2713, ordinance number 2531, and ordinance for a voluntary annexation request by American Recess LLC for 2 parcels totaling 67.7 acres and generally located along the south corner of the intersection of Pyramid Lake Highway and Highland Parkway. Mr. Rundle, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sparks City Council, Jim Rundle, Planning Manager. Today's request for annexation is from American Recess LLC, and this request is for voluntary annexation. If you see on the monitors, I have the site circled, and it's highlighted in the pink line, and that's the site that we're talking about. I'm going to zoom in now. The site, again, is 2 parcels, approximately 67 acres. With the hand on the monitor, it's showing Pyramid Lake Highway, Sparks Boulevard, and then Highland Ranch Parkway runs up here near the site, next to the site. Today's motion is from the Sparks Planning Commission, and staff forwarded that recommendation to the Sparks Planning Commission, and it's a recommendation of denial. This motion to the Sparks City Council, actually this recommendation to the Sparks City Council from the Planning Commission, is based on a lack of evidence, which is important to me, but I want to point out again, a lack of evidence as opposed to just simply a recommendation of denial. And I'll explore that a little bit later. You are likely to hear today from the applicant, based on the testimony from the Planning Commission, that there is no risk to the Sparks City Council if the city were to annex this land. However, that's not staff's determination. There is a risk regarding annexing this land in regard to first response, provision of sewer, fire response, police response, even code enforcement if this site were to be annexed. Not only would those services be affected, but also the city would be responsible to annex, at the time of annexation, Highland Ranch Parkway. Because of the risks associated with the annexation to the municipality, the state statutes set out certain findings that the city of Sparks has incorporated into their municipal code to consider requests for annexation. I'm going to talk about 4 findings now that are laid out in your staff report, but I'm going to change up the order just a little bit. One of the findings that the city council must consider is the site requesting annexation contiguous, and is it voluntary? And I'll point out again on the map that this site is contiguous to the city of Sparks, and it is contiguous to land that has been previously annexed. So it does meet that requirement. Is the request voluntary? The request is voluntary, and we have in the application a request from the owner and the applicant to request annexation. Another finding that must be considered was, did the application receive public notice, and were there public hearings held? The Planning Commission and this City Council meeting serve as the public meetings, and the application was noticed to all the property owners within a certain proximity of the site. Another finding for consideration by the City Council is the property within the sphere of influence and in the 7-year annexation program. This parcel, these two parcels are both within the Sparks sphere of influence, but they are not within the 7-year annexation program because the 7-year annexation program has expired. The 7-year annexation program expiration does not necessarily affect this request because, again, back to the first finding I was talking about, it is a voluntary annexation request and it is contiguous. The annexation program comes into play when the city force annexes or does a discontiguous annexation, like the council once considered in the East Truckee River Canyon. The fourth finding that I want to talk about is finding A2 in your staff report, and it's the finding that provides for the contention regarding this item. There are numerous findings that must be considered with finding A2, including but not limited to consideration of the logical extension of the city limits and the effective and efficient and cost-effective provision of city services. Within this finding, there is a requirement that municipal water provision must be made to the site. I'm going to change maps now. This map was submitted by the applicant. Again, Pyramid Lake Highway, Sparks Boulevard turning into Highland Ranch Parkway. And this is one of the sites here. This is the second, one of the parcels. This is the second parcel. And the applicant has identified that the municipal water service is available within Highland Ranch Parkway. In regard to the finding in regard to this finding, staff has laid out a case, in regard to the finding A2, staff has laid out a case that the city cannot at this time determine if cost-effective provision of services can be met at the time of annexation. And I want to say that again, staff has laid out a case that the city cannot determine at this time that the effective provision of services can be met. This is a map of the city of Sparks and areas around the city of Sparks regarding fire provision, the provision of fire service and response within the adopted 6-minute response time. I'm going to zoom in closer to the site now. The site is approximately here, again where the white hand is, and this is Pyramid Lake Highway, Sparks Boulevard, Highland Ranch Parkway. And this area has been highlighted in the map that we made in the red. The red area is areas that are outside of the 6-minute response time. There, because of mutual aid, Fire Station 17 does provide 6-minute response time here. The green and yellow come from Fire Station 4, Sparks Fire Station 4, and Sparks Fire Station 5. What I want to point out is in the adopted service level by the City of Sparks City Council of a 6-minute response time, that is, at the end of the day, a 4-minute response time. 2 of the 6 minutes in regard to that 6-minute response time are for basically the phone call to come in to dispatch to call the fire station, the firefighters get ready, get in the truck, and begin to roll, and that takes approximately 2 minutes. So by the time that the truck begins to roll from the station to the site where the accident has occurred or the emergency response should be within 4 minutes, and that's what this map demonstrates. So if you were to go out on the site and time yourself and say, I made it within 6 minutes, that would not be the correct analysis. And again, on this map, we're talking about our fire stations, but as the council is very aware, fire stations don't necessarily just respond to fire. They're first responders, so they could be responding to a heart attack or a medical issue or a car accident. Again, first responders, which includes the fire response. If a actual fire were to start on the parcel that we are considering today or on the site, again, approximately in this area, the city of Sparks would be responsible for fighting that fire. If the fire were to turn into a wildland fire similar to the Sparks S fire, the city of Sparks would be responsible for paying for the fire services that occurred on the land that is annexed. If it went up over the hill into Sun Valley, once it left the city limits, that would be for a different municipality to pay for. Another issue that the city, your city staff has addressed in the staff report is the provision of municipal sewer. At this time, there is insufficient data for your staff to determine if there's the appropriate amount of room inside the pipe for the interceptor to accommodate development at the site. The city commissioned a study, and your city staff is currently in the analyzation phase of that sewer study that the city council commissioned. Isn't that my 3 minutes? The city staff is in the phase of analyzing the data that was provided by Atkins in that sewer study, and staff actually expects to receive a response on some questions to that study and have an analysis completed and back to staff so that staff can prepare an item for the city council for the December city council meeting. Staff has laid out a case in the staff report and briefly in this presentation for the city council to consider this annexation. Staff and the Planning Commission believe it is premature to annex this site as the lack of information, again, the lack of information inhibits staff from determining if basic levels of service can be provided, including fire and sewer, excuse me. And therefore, the Planning Commission and staff are recommending denial of the annexation based on the lack of evidence to support these findings. I said I would circle back to the motion, and the motion is fairly straightforward based on the findings A1 and such. But I wanted to say, really, the motion could be based on the lack of evidence to support the findings. Staff is recommending denial as well as the Planning Commission. And that, to me, is a little bit different than just simply saying we move to recommend denial of this annexation request. So staff, I just wanted to point that out. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Rendell? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jim, I just wanted, there was a point in your presentation that you said 3 times. At this point, we cannot, I'm not sure exact words you use, make analyst of able to provide services. What are you basing the analyst on?
Basing that on is the staff has been working with the consultant through the contract that the city council approved for that sewer analysis, and that's not done. And so we have this substantial amount of information that will be able to provide us very detailed information to make an analysis, and we don't have that completed today.
So
we
shake everything down. Just, you know, I mean, we're annexing that intersection. We already have that intersection on the other side. We have 640 acres of vacant land and a whole stream of properties to get that 640 acres. So really, when we shake it all down, the fire's not an issue, the police is not an issue. Those things are not issues that because we're already there in that area. So the whole shakedown on this is the sewer. That's the only thing that's really holding us on up. We have policies on the fire. If you're outside the 6-minute zones, you have to build to a certain standards. We have policies on all that stuff. You know, I'm going to want to bring this down to the core. What is staff's core objection to it?
Well, at the end of the day, what we tried to do is take the council's policy regarding fire, regarding logical extension of city resources and the city limits, including provision of fire and sewer, and make an analysis on all of the policy that the council has laid out in front of us. One of those does include provision of sewer, and we don't know whether or not we can help the council to determine if there is room in the pipe to accommodate another parcel into the city limits. But at the end of the day, the other policy issues, like you said, I kind of drilled down on the sewer issue. At the end of the day, on those other policy issues is up to the city council to consider whether or not that is something that is important for the council to, I mean, you're considering it, but how important is that issue? So I don't want to put any words in the council's.
I understand. Yeah, well, what I'm just trying to do is, you know, because when we look at, you know, it's in our sphere of influence. So at some point in the last 25 years, we decided that this was important enough for the city of Sparks to take a look at. Now, you're absolutely right. We don't have a 7-year plan, but we've never come back and said anything through several zoning and annexation redone during my time. We've never come back and said there's nothing that more that we want to annex in. In fact, I believe everything that's brown, our annexation right now is everything from Ridgetop down to the city of Sparks is what we're is in our sphere of influence, correct?
I'm gonna. You want to flip your map, Karen? This map would be our. This map is our sphere of influence.
And just kind of put the pointer to make sure we understand how far we are inside of our sphere of influence right there. See, so we're pretty.
About where the hand is that what you mean, Councilman?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I'm just trying to show that, you know, we have a huge sphere of influence there for, at some time, some council said this is what we want of our sphere of influence, and so this piece of property is within that. And I haven't heard anything to the contrary where the council would say we're not going to do this sphere of influence along that line. So I think our policy stands is that was a sphere of influence. That is what we wanted to annex if and when the time came somebody wanted to.
That would probably be our council that did this through the regional plan, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, and then it gets to be tricky where a portion of that area was put into the sphere in 2002, a portion was 2006. Some of the land we were told to put in through the settlement agreement. Some of this land is designated open space, so it's not necessarily identified for, in my opinion, I don't believe all of it in the sphere of influence is identified for annexation because of the hillside constraints that are in that area. Some of it's flat development constrained.
It would never come back to us because it can't be developed.
Correct.
But it's still in our sphere of influence.
Correct.
Okay.
So some of it would be in time may be a logical extension. Some of it may not, and it is in our sphere.
And what I'm trying to do is I understand where your positions on everything is, and I look when I say, well, it's outside of our 6-minute response time. There's presently houses in the city of Sparks that have developed that are outside the 6 minutes response time. We've allowed that to go on. So I'm not sure that having a piece of vacant land outside of our 6 minutes is in a direct conflict of what our past policies have been. So I'm just trying to drill down to exactly what the real problem is that we need to focus on and how to get it solved.
Yeah, and the staff's tried to outline the issues for the council based on policy decisions and through finding A2, basically, and then allow the council to make those discussion issues on how important those policies are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jim.
When I said this council, I would be Ron and myself. I think the other three were not here at that time. 2002. That was the 2001 update that took until 2002 because we had so many lawsuits against each other, and we didn't sue anybody, but the county and Reno were suing back and forth. It was
They sued regional
pretty,
planning.
pretty crazy times.
Which brought Sparks into the lawsuit.
Yeah. So next is Ron, but you have something for this particular, John? You're okay with that? Go ahead, John.
I would like a chance to respond to Councilman Schmidt's question perhaps a little more directly, because I think I know what you're asking. I think the biggest issue is the provision of sewer. As this, particularly you, Councilman Schmidt, are aware, we did the NSSOI in 1994. Part of the NSSOI included master infrastructure plan for the extension of the city into what, back then was called Spanish Springs, what we now call North Sparks. Part of that infrastructure plan was the sewer backbone, which was constructed in a couple of phases, one for the northwest interceptor, which is the one that would serve this property. The other was the northeast interceptor, which serves Wingfield Springs, Foothills. The whole plan was put together. This council, Councilman Schmidt, I think you were actually part of it, and that plan was converted to the Impact Fee Service Area 1 area to handle the financing of the provision of those services.
Unfortunately, I was.
Yeah, well, 15 years. So to get directly to your question, I'm certain when Mr. Gordon gets up here, he's going to tell you their plans for what they'd like this parcel to be. The infrastructure that's out there today has been designed to accommodate the land plan that was the North Sparks Sphere of Influence became IFSA 1. The part of the sewer they may or may not tie into was put in to accommodate the needs of Kylie Ranch, particularly Kylie Ranch North, which, as you will also recall, we've amended those handbooks a few times to take on, say, the hospital that Renown wants to do. We've upgraded some of those land uses. The risk, as I see it right now, Councilman Schmidt, is identifying how much capacity through the Kylie Ranch, what is already built, may or may not be there. If it is there, great. If not, we need to identify to Steve Hamilton, who is the prospective buyer, what his proportional share of any upgrades to get from his site through Kylie Ranch to that interceptor may be. The risk, therefore, is if the cost to upgrade that sewer to meet whatever needs they are is very high, we annex today, it could become stranded land, in that the cost to upgrade the sewer does not make for the project they desire. The other thing to remember is upon annexation, we immediately absorb about $1 million worth of maintenance responsibility for Highland Ranch Parkway over the next 20 years. So we would really like the opportunity to finish the sewer study, identify these, be able to tell the council that we have capacity, or if not, this is what needs to be done, so that the applicant fully understands what needs to be done. And we're not left with a parcel that until somebody, say, comes up with $6 million to upgrade a sewer line, can be built on, and at the same time we would absorb $1 million worth of maintenance over the next 20 years in the form of Highland Ranch Parkway. I hope that answers your question as to how do we really see the risk. That's my interpretation of the risk and the need for the comprehensive sewer upgrade that we've been working hard on.
There's no doubt, you answered my question, and I was going to rephrase my question to be real simple. If the sewer issue wasn't in front of us, would we be here talking today in this matter? If the sewer issue wasn't the driving force of it, everything else issues are mitigated in one way or another through our policies already. Would that be safe to say that we probably wouldn't be here if we had answers to the sewer issues?
I would answer that question. I think we would be here not necessarily with a recommendation from the Planning Commission for denial. We may be here identifying issues that we see and asking the council to review them with our policies and make a decision. The sewer is so critical, I think it got us to a denial.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
No, I didn't. She bumped me off.
No. You got timed out, but you were in front of me, so please go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The analysis that we're doing When will that be done? Do we know?
Well, I believe that the staff has reviewed it very recently and provided an additional analysis back to the consultant. And from what we hope, that their analysis of our additional information request could put the item back in front of the city council at the December meeting.
So when we do the analysis, do we take in the whole green area in case, or is there multiple connections?
I'm going to have Andy Hummel come up. He's got a nice map that I believe that we can put up that will demonstrate to the council just what your staff is doing when we're looking at this.
Okay, now does this include water? I know we're talking sewer, but do we have to cover?
It's not drinking water, not potable water. It's just the sewer.
Just the sewer?
Yeah.
And before we get started, your basic premise here is we want to find out how much extra capacity we need to service that area and the other side of the road, because we know there's some more projects going up there. What are we doing?
Right. Like Mr. Martini was explaining to the council, through the development of, well, I'd like to say development, through the handbook approvals that the city council and planning commission have done over the last 6 years, more importantly, the hospital, similar size to Northern Nevada Medical Center. I think it's a 300-bed hospital. Those begin to put substantial amount of impacts on the backbone infrastructure. And so those are the kinds of things we have to consider when we're potentially adding more land into the city that we would need to serve.
Okay, and that is the county's land right now, correct?
That is in Washoe County currently. Everything is in Washoe County, like they always like to say.
So they're maintaining Highlands Parkway also?
Correct.
Okay. Show me Matt.
Yeah. Yes, for the record, Andy Hummel, Utility Manager for the City of Sparks. Probably start with a little bit of big picture of the difference between our 2005 model and what we're doing today that kind of answers your question. In the 2005 model, we simplified the 30,000 plus parcels in the City of Sparks into 46 sewage basins. So took a lot of info and really narrowed it down into just a couple of points in that model. And we routed that to our sewer interceptors, which on this map are generally the orange, purple, and red lines. Our northwest interceptors is purple here, following the hand. Yeah, so generally an interceptor is, we typically view that as 18 inches or bigger, 1.5 tall. We take that all the way down through Spanish Springs and then down Sparks Boulevard here, and then ultimately tie it into our joint interceptor that we share with Reno in Greg Street here, and that goes to Tumwater. So a lot of infrastructure that it flows through before it gets there. So we looked at the interceptors with that 2005 report at the time, the technology that's about the best you could really do and still have a model that you could run with the computers at the time. Technology, computers, data available, as well as all the master plan and land use changes that we've had over the last decade really prompted us to let's look at a new model. About 2 years ago, got it into the CIP. Let's take a much harder look at this and made some improvements. Some of the key points of improvement, as I said, the technology, the new modeling software, we're able to now look at, we're about 36,000 parcels today in Sparks. So we're able to look at those individually, apply what their land use is, what their flow rate would be, what their current zoning, are they vacant, somebody built, what their future build out would be for those parcels, so we can take anything that's within our area and put it in there. Tumwa's data, Truckee Meadows Water Authority has gotten a lot better from their metering program over the last decade as well, so we have a pretty extensive database we're able to pull on to see what those individual parcels do for water use. And then we also did a metering program over about a month period last summer in 2015, so we were actually able to catch the storm that we had that summer. So we were able to see not only our normal flows, but also wet weather, so much better calibration than we've ever gotten before. So we were able to calibrate those two and got them to calibrate very nicely so we could see, what those individual land uses really do to be able to plug into the model. So we were able to take that at the parcel level and put that to our individual neighborhood pipes on this map. Those are basically the blue and yellow pipes, especially in our urban core. We've never really looked at that before. To be able to see, ultimately if somebody comes in and wants to add a bunch of apartments or something like that, what it's going to do to those smaller pipes we have.
So does the analysis just go to the piece of property they're interested in, or does it go on the other side of the road?
Yeah,
Or do you have to do a
let me
new
pull
analysis?
up a better map that shows that.
While Andy's pulling that up, in addition to what he was talking about with the technology of the new, this year's study that we're working on, he said that we analyzed 36,000 parcels, each parcel in the city of Sparks. In the 2005 study, the technology only provided for basically large clumps together at about 50. So there was only 50 for the entire city that you could zoom in at. There just wasn't the technology available. If that gives some perspective on the advancements in 11 years.
Okay, so the analysis goes to?
Yeah, so here on this map, our infrastructure basically goes to Pyramid. There's a stub under Pyramid.
There's a stub under?
Yes, that's what our data shows. But first manhole starts here at Pyramid. We come down Sparks Boulevard, down Henry Orr and Kiley Parkway, and then ultimately tie into the Northwest Interceptor, which is this line here. So the renowned parcel has been mentioned. That's this parcel right here. They will most likely come into this infrastructure here, but it's ultimately the same for a significant portion that these parcels over here will have to flow through. On that renowned parcel, one of the other things that we got out of this analysis with was water data. A hospital, medical facility, school, things like that are typically institutional type land use. We had one flyer in the data that was about 4 times what all the other uses were. That was Northern Nevada Medical Center. So if we'd have just put institutional on this parcel, that would have been grossly off. That's one of the comments that we had back to the consultant was, let's match that with what Renowned.
Okay,
so that Renowned.
Andy,
and
I
Northern
get
Nevada.
that. I'm talking
Yeah.
about their parcel.
Yeah.
Go back to that.
Yeah, so their parcel is here. It'll basically tie in right here.
Right, so.
They'll share from here on.
So the analysis
Mhm.
just includes that one parcel or across the street and Highland Parkway, or is it that whole entire section going up Highland
It'll
Parkway?
include the current master plan zoning
Mhm.
as outlined. I think for this, it was
GC.
14 acres of commercial.
Okay, so
Yep.
that's how far it goes.
Yeah.
So do we have to do a new analysis for the other side of the road?
No, what we'll do, Councilman Smith, is we understand where each parcel, even in the sphere, where it would drain to,
Mhm.
if you will. And so we have to make sure that the line that is up on this map, it would, for example, go right into the same line that the Renowned facility would be using. So we got to make sure the pipe's this big and Renowned using most of it, there's nowhere for that to go.
I understand all that.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm just wondering about the analysis and how
It'll include those.
Yeah.
it'll include everything. To see if
Yeah.
it'll take, and that's how you're going to decide how big the pipe is going to be.
The pipe's there, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah,
Just a pyramid.
Yeah, so it'll need to
And stub
analyze.
under.
But again, we can make the pipe really big on the other side of Pyramid, but if
Yeah.
it's not big enough to accommodate it
So you
down
might,
the road.
so you might have to replace some of that piping. That's what I'm getting at.
And that's where we talk about the risks to the city. and-
Okay. Okay. That's what I was trying to get to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Bobby?
I guess the other question I was going to have on the sewer capacity, when you get the numbers at the end of this study, it's reevaluating the whole city parcel by parcel.
Correct.
And you have like a really good, the technology has allowed you now to really zero in on more precise, even like my house to City Hall to wherever, to really get some really current and very accurate data. And that information will give you the full sewer capacity for the whole city, as well as down every interceptor, every line, is what you're going to be looking at with this new data. So it will help you determine not only the whole city and what's going into the sewer, the sewer plant, but how it's getting there. And so you'll look at capacity for the city and for each of the interceptors and pipes that are currently there. Is that my understanding of what will happen when we get the results of these numbers back?
Yeah, and that's one of the final things we're working on with the consultant is how to present that in a manner that's understandable and defensible.
To the layman.
Yeah. That capacity question, we build something here, all the infrastructure it flows through may be fine all the way to the plant, but it may affect something that flows in another interceptor that joins in somewhere else. Yeah.
And that also includes, my understanding is everything that is approved but not built. So that's a huge consideration, that not what we have just today, all of us that are up and operating, and this parcel should it be built on.
Right.
But we have already approved a lot of parcels, a lot of the hospital being one, but other approvals that we've made that have not been built, and so those are factored into your numbers as well, correct?
And the capacity that we've allocated to the unincorporated county in our line.
Okay, so we're looking also Washoe County and what they feed into the same system.
Yeah.
And that'll be updated too. All the county data will also, you're able to update all of their data in this study. You're looking at their numbers as well.
Yeah.
We'll take into consideration that we've afforded them capacity in our line.
They've recently completed their own analysis up in that area.
Okay.
But we do have the 2005 sewer agreement that provides for the amount of flow that are allowed. So we've made sure that that's accommodated.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And Councilwoman Bybee touched on it, maybe you can elaborate, is how much are we giving the county of our capacity?
Through that 2005 agreement, it was approximately 8,500 connections up there. To date, they're at about 40%.
40% of our infrastructure is going to non-Sparks residents.
That's about 40% of that agreement amount, sorry. So as far as that percentage, they paid for that through fees at the time through that agreement. Yeah.
It's a done deal, but it still affects our capacity, and the only thing we can do is to educate 8,500 Washington County residents on how to reduce their capacity, and we have nothing we can do if they exceed the 8,500, whatever that terms an acre feet a year that they put down that line. We have nothing we can do to stop it. Can't plug it off. So they're going to take whatever capacity they want to, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, just one last question and get this down to it. I understand the seriousness of this issue, but I'm going to go ahead and make this. I want to make the issue very, very serious for the future council here. If your sewer report comes back and you can't service 64 acres of land in self-storage units and 14 acres of commercial, we have a much bigger problem than anybody ever thought about here. This is peanuts compared to the problem you got coming. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would depend on where that.
You got a bottleneck. You got a problem. If you can't annex this because you don't have sewer capacity, you got a huge problem on your hands. Much bigger than this 64 acres ever thought about being. So, thank you.
Mr. Adams.
No, I was simply pointing out that our mics are hot.
Okay.
Background conversation.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, it's time for the, what do you call? You call the guys that are trying to do this. Okay, come on up, Gordon. Mr. Gordon, the applicant. That's what I was looking for. Jeez. May we hear from the
We call you all
applicant?
kinds of things.
No, I have a PowerPoint.
May we hear from the applicant, please, Mr. Gordon?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, for the record, my name is Garrett Gordon, today representing the applicant and the property owner for this annexation request. I have a brief PowerPoint and happy to answer any questions. I would note that the Planning Commission decision, in fact, it was a denial 3-2, but it was 3-2, and kind of the swing vote on the record said, and I think all 5 of them have actually said, we support the project, but we're concerned about the sewer until those results come back. I contend, and you'll see my presentation today, that there's no risk to the city. You already have Sparks code in place that protects you from any sewer concerns. So the property, it's been came up of, you know, can this 64-acre piece of property be serviced? Actually, it's 20 acres we're talking about, given the hillside ordinances. We're talking about 20 acres of property. Certainly, we've shared with staff. Our fiscal report has reflected the ultimate goal is multifamily and some commercial, including some storage units. But today, the annexation, if it comes in, it comes in at Ag 40, 1 or 2 homes at best. And so as far as servicing these 2 homes, if they're ever built, which certainly isn't our intent, but that it's not a full project today, it will be in the future, but we're talking about a piece of property coming in at Ag 40, which is in fact in the Sparks sphere of influence. And I think that's very important with this discussion, and that Sparks sphere of influence, that process goes through regional, that process goes through the master plan process here at Sparks, and actually not only it's in the sphere, it's been designated of 14 acres general commercial. So this body at one point designated this, saying this was appropriate for general commercial. And what does that mean in kind of in the big picture? I know staff has referenced some policy findings in the staff report regarding regional plan policies. So number one, the regional plan identifies sphere of influence and identifies where a city may expand in the foreseeable future. So number one is regional said, and this body and certainly members of this body who are on regional had said, okay, we have a sphere of influence, where should it be? It should be on these 2 parcels, and 14 acres were actually designated general commercial. That's the next point. Your master plan has to be in conformance with regional. And regional says to be in conformance, any master plan for any new development must be able to ensure necessary public facilities when new development occurs. I think that's the key question here. We're talking about an annexation. We're talking about an overlay of master plan, 14 acres of commercial. The next step would be zoning, and then we'd have use permits. So there's many more bites at the apple. This is just certainly annexing a sphere of a property that's already in the sphere of influence. And I've noted here, the property is already in there with the commercial designation, so it must comply with the regional plan and all of those policies dealing with services. So I indicated here, Regional Planning and Sparks City Council already approved this property for the sphere, already designated 14 acres of general commercial, and annexations don't go to regional unless we expand that 14 acres. So I think you have a property owner here who knows he's in the sphere, knows he's been given 14 acres of commercial, knows, and I'll talk to this later, there's 2 forms of annexation. One is meeting all the findings that staff indicated, but there's another one of voluntary. Those findings, those elements are not findings, they're just factors, because this is a voluntary annexation, and I'll show you the state law in a minute, which is based on the Cold Springs case, is that if you are, number 1, contiguous, and number 2, have signatures by all the property owners, you should be allowed to come in. Now, I'm not saying you can't look at services and look at other factors, but those aren't really the legal findings that I would respectfully, a lot of respect for John Martini and for Rundle, that it's not, that there's lack of evidence of us coming in because of sewer. Those are factors, not findings, and I think you have other protections. Fire, it was touched on, but again, staff references the regional plan, and it talks about the time the impacts will occur. I think Councilman Schmidt pointed out some great points with respect to, we don't have a project right now. We have A40. We have the ability to go pull a building permit for a house.
that building permit, the scope of reviewing it is going to be, can this property be served? We can't go out there today if you approve this. So at the time of development occurs, which is not at the time of annexation, it's at the time of, say, rezoning, and then special use permits, and then eventually a building permit, the services for new development should be there, will be based on adequate adopted levels of service. Again, we've talked about with staff, and also I met with Amy Ray over at Truckee Meadows, who said, yeah, there's reimbursement mechanisms. They have obviously an automatic aid agreement with all of you, and that when and if this is ever serviced, we're saying as an applicant, a reimbursement agreement could be a possibility. Also, I've talked to staff about annexing us into the fire assessment district. There's all kinds of options to mitigate it, but I would contend to you today of annexing us in when we're already in the sphere, those conversations are more relevant when we're talking about a project. So here's sewer, and here's the big one. And I think this is really my most important slide, is that it's 100% relevant to what we're talking about. In your current, that's chapter 1304, in your current Sparks Municipal Code, raw land development, what we're talking about here. The policy declaration, and forgive me, but I want to read through this. It's in order to provide for an orderly development of sanitary sewer lines and storm drain facilities throughout the city limits, it is declared to be a policy of the city to provide for extensions of existing sanitary sewer lines, storm drain lines to serve those areas of the city which are in the planning stages of development. That's us, raw land planning stages. In such a manner as to allow the costs of such extensions to be paid out of funds readily available to the city, and here we go, and to be charged against the record owner of the land being developed on a pro rata basis prior to final acceptance of such development by the proper officials of the city. So that's the policy. It's that the record owner needs to be paying for its own sewer. As you go down through that code, prior to any connection, any such land developer, subdivider, or property owner within the area to be served by any such extension shall enter into a written agreement with the city to pay his proportionate share of the entire cost of their extension. When does that happen? At new development, one, if we do residential development, you get us on the map, or two, if we're doing a commercial development, you get us on the building permit. And finally, it says in here, nothing contained herein, that's your whole code, shall require the city council to approve or the city to share in any of the costs of any such extensions to any area within the city. So I would contend to you, you have us on this one, that it's completely developer risk to come in here, annex in, and when we get our project put together, we got to pay for it, and here's how.
Here, can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
If that says to share in any of the cost of any such extensions to any area within the city, how does that affect the rest of the connection that we have to connect up to, if that has to be bigger? Below, on the east side of Pyramid. Anybody? I mean, because that says within.
And I would argue for the record how I would interpret it, and I'm not, there's no intent here to play games of extensions versus oversizing, undersizing. I mean, we know, for the record's clear, that when we come in with a project, that we are responsible for our pro rata share of whatever that sewer extension, upgrade, sizing, whatever it may be, that it's our responsibility given this code.
Okay. John?
Go ahead, John.
I don't disagree with Mr. Gordon, however, he's not reading the code in its entirety. The code also requires the Public Works Department to bring forward a report to the City Council that defines what the capital improvements are and what the developer's pro rata share may be upon extension. In a lot of ways, that's the sewer master plan that we've been talking about, will do, and we will be able to provide you with that information.
You don't know that information right now,
We
do
don't
you?
know it right now.
So you don't know what their pro rata share will be, do you?
I have absolutely no idea.
And to respond, I would note, there's no project yet. This is the annexation. So really, we're talking about sewer to one home on this 60 acres. We know when we come back to rezone it, yeah, we have to prove up our sewer lines, our water, discovery from NV Energy, all of that. This is just step one annexation, and we will certainly work with staff as the project develops if we have the benefit of this approval today.
But You have more, Gordon? or-
I do. You want me to?
Okay. No, that's all right. She has a question on certain part.
Sure.
And then Mr. Lawson?
Okay, you're, so you're talking about, this is for the annexation, and you're talking about one house. So can you tell me what you think the project is going to be? Because it's a really big difference if you're doing multifamily or residential compared to commercial, or some mini warehouses are huge determining factors of what the impact's going to be from the sewer, just from the sewer, let alone from fire. So annexing something when we don't know what, that's an important factor. For me, it is, anyway.
Councilman, I really appreciate the question, and here's what we did to be as transparent and forthright as possible with our project, is in our fiscal analysis, which is a requirement for an annexation. We didn't, and I think it wouldn't be, it wouldn't have been appropriate to do a fiscal analysis of a house and serving one house when we have an end game, right? We wanted to make sure not only to spend all this money on a fiscal analysis and on traffic and on this application, does our end game, is it fiscally responsible? And I was going to hit this later, but I'll touch on it now. Our two scenarios was, number one, this is already master plan overlay for 14 acres. So if there's no other entitlements but for zoning compatibility with master plan, so 14 acres of commercial, does that pencil? Is it fiscally responsible with fire, services, police, all of it? Our impact came back, and staff had said in the meeting there was no red flags in our fiscal analysis. They agreed with it. It was fiscally responsible of a net positive revenue to the city. We did scenario two then, assuming that we got our special use permits for multifamily, 200 units, commercial, and a mini storage, and that also penciled in the black and was also fiscally positive to the city, laid out that way. So we tried to be as transparent as possible of what the end game was, and it does pencil, and that's why I think I can stand up here with a straight face saying this is an appropriate annexation, even if we get, assuming we get all the later approvals, or assuming we don't get it, given we already have 14 acres of general commercial.
Okay, thank you.
You want to wait?
Yeah, please go ahead and finish.
Okay. So the big question is why now? I know that there's been some concern about why now. Why can't we just wait for the sewer report? Well, a couple of reasons. One is in our fiscal analysis, it included some of the market study, and there's a need for apartment product in Reno Sparks right now. Vacancy rates are low, and this was interesting. 80% of the employees in this zip code live outside of the area for lack of residential mixed offering. I know the previous item you had with your comprehensive plan, there was policies in there regarding diversity of housing, mixed housing options. We think if you add some multifamily into the zip code, you're not going to have the reverse commute program problems. You're going to have folks who are working there could actually live there. Two, timing. So I think anytime I represent developers, they're always anxious to move forward and capitalize on the market. They approached me back in March or April, and we approached staff, and obviously sewer was a concern. And we postponed for a couple months, and we still were waiting on sewer. I understand these things take time. I understand there's consultants, there's review, you have to get it right. But it was commissioned in March 2015. And I talked to staff earlier today about, well, when, let's say we kind of agree to a continuance. When would that be? Would it be next week or next month? And I was told, given the holidays, we're looking at January. So that's another 3 months. So I think you have a multi-step process where if annexation came in today, then we could start worrying about the rezone. And then we can sit down with staff and talk about a project in conjunction with the sewer report and come back to you together with the project and the sewer. I don't think, and I think your codes allow you to do this, is there's no risk just to annex this in today. We're going to come with the rezoning later and work with staff on it. The next one is kind of a delay of a sewer study results shouldn't create a moratorium on voluntary annexations. Let me hit on that briefly. This is voluntary. And I'm acknowledging that there is no certainty for future approvals. You have that sewer code I mentioned of you have us on the hook. There's no reason here to bamboozle you of we got into the city and now you have to provide a service. I think state law supports your position, and I think us as the applicant on the record is saying we're not trying to force services. We're trying for a many-step process. fiscally responsible annexation. We touched on that. This is fiscally responsible if we just stick with our current master plan, or if we go to the multifamily storage that we're allowing. And here's finally my last two slides are the findings for the annexation. Here's the annexation program. This is one of two options of when a city annexes. This is kind of the forced annexation that Rundle mentioned. City shall consider all of these items. Right? Those have to be findings, and I would argue he's correct. There should be evidence on the record for each of those. This is a voluntary annexation. Under state law, it says as an alternative to the procedures for initiation of annexation proceedings set forth in the ones I just mentioned. So opposite, the governing body of the city may, after notifying the Board of County Commissioners, annex, number one, property owned by you, or two, property owned by a third party, so long as it's contiguous and so long as 100% have signed on. So we're treated kind of like you. If the city wanted to annex, the same findings or factors would apply, and here it's just, are we contiguous, and are 100% of the owners have signed in. Here we are, property owner, developer, asking to come in, knowing that there are no guarantees. These other items, I'm not saying ignore sewer, it's a big issue. Don't ignore all the other issues that were raised. But I think given we're asking for 20 acres that are developable, we're already in the sphere. There's already 14 acres of master plan commercial put on top. So someone at some time thought that this was appropriate for commercial and could be served. I know that a lot of the builders I represent here say, God, Sparks is great. I keep hearing they're open for business, and let's continue to work with Sparks. And I think this is a good opportunity to bring this property in and continue working with this Mr. Hamilton, who has Hamilton Homes, Hamilton Solar, has done some great things in this community, and I think he'll do another great project that we can all be proud of. I'm here for any questions, and I thank you the indulgence. I know it was longer than expected, but thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's all right. You can have a chance to give your opinion. It's good. That's good. It's one of the best arguments you've made in a long time, I think. And
I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's good. I've heard a lot of your arguments. This one's really, really good. So, Mr. Lawson, I believe, is up first.
So my question, I guess, was just, John, come on back down here. And the question that I had for Garrett, obviously, was why now? He laid out the reason why now. What are we really out if we annex this property right today?
$1 million over the next 20 years.
That's $50,000 a year. So in the big scheme of things, $50,000 isn't a lot of money. Other than that, we're not out anything.
You'll also be responsible as the primary responder for any emergency services calls on this land. Code enforcement calls stay for weeks. That's about it that I can think of.
So, I mean, I don't know if we can find out how many calls have gone to that parcel by the county over the last 100 years, but I would imagine there's not a lot. I'm tending to just, let's move forward. I mean, and I have to agree with Mr. Schmidt, is if we can't annex in 20 acres, we're in really bad shape. We need to reevaluate everything we're doing as far as growth entirely for that entire Spanish Springs area, up to and including revoking the capacity we have given to the county. If we're in that tough a shape at this point, I'm really scared. I don't hope that's not the case, but I have a feeling it probably isn't. But there's the other side of it is, and I gotta go both ways on this, and Garrett and I have had this conversation, is police and fire service is big to me. And even when it does get annexed, and you do your project, can we get there in a timely manner to get good outcomes? I mean, the last thing you want is a commercial property out there that's basically on an island, and any Tom, Dick, or Harry can go out there and rob the people that live there without real reproach, because we really can't get a policeman there in time, or vice versa, a fire or a medical emergency. So those are weighing on my mind. But at the same time, I agree, we are open for business, and sometimes I think we got to take a chance. So I'm leaning towards letting it annex, and we'll see how this plays out over the future. But we can put the brakes on at any time after this, my understanding.
Don't forget, we have a public hearing coming, so.
So I just, for me, you know how I feel. Thank you.
Okay, and then one question you had, if you're afraid of what might happen in the future with not enough capacity, even as for this 20 acres, why wouldn't you want to know now? Why wouldn't you want to know now we have a problem before we add more land to something that's already
Well,
extended?
I say that kind of tongue in cheek because I don't think we're that close on capacity.
I don't
If we
disagree
are,
with you.
it'd be really nice to know that. We need to completely change everything we're doing at this point, stop all growth, and, you know, this puts the brakes on all growth in our entire area. If that's where we are, but I just don't, I'm willing to, it's still Nevada, and I'm still willing to gamble.
You shouldn't worry about gambling. Go ahead, Charlene.
Okay. I think I'm absolutely agreeing what Mayor Martini just said. I really have an issue with the fact that we're so close to having the numbers on the sewer survey. I want those numbers because I want to know throughout the city, and especially everything that's been approved already and is sitting there waiting, and we don't know timeline. We do on some, on others we don't know, whether it's the hospital or other developments. We've already have a commitment there, and I really want to see, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to have the capacity that we need. But I want those numbers. I want those facts before we make decisions on anything, because this is one annexation, and then do we look at another? I mean, how do we resolve other projects, other things coming to us without facts that we need to make a good decision? Garrett talked about the owners paying for the sewer, for the extension, and for the expansion. I get that, but the bigger question for me is, do we have the capacity? It's fine if you're going to pay for it, but do we have the capacity? And I'm hoping that we do. So I'm not opposed to the annexation. I need to have that information that I know that we're good on doing an annexation. Obviously, you're looking at more than just 14 acres of general commercial. And if we do, it also will tell us too, do we have the capacity we can put the 200 multifamily units? And that would be a good thing too for you and for our housing and our affordable housing. So those things are positives, but without that, the numbers in front of me, it's very hard for me to support this today. I would like to come back. I would like to not deny, because I don't know if that delays us for a year. Somebody can help me with procedurally on that. I'd rather have like a delay of tabling this and making the decision when we have those numbers, because I don't want to delay. I don't want to procedurally deny it, and then have to wait for a year or whatever. And let me real quickly talk about police, fire, and code enforcement, especially police and fire outside of that 6-minute, and our response time is critically important to me. And I'm looking at, I made notes in our new master plan update the comprehensive plan requires acceptable levels of service. And that's something we just voted on. We just said this is part of how we want to operate in the city of Sparks, includes acceptable levels of service. So those are all issues for me right now. But can you answer on the, if we delayed this to make a decision, tabled it, or did a delay on it, what time-wise, how that would look?
Mr. Mayor? A denial of the request is essentially like denying something with prejudice. So on an annexation, if an annexation is denied by the city council, it is a year before anyone could request to annex those two respective parcels. The city council does have options afforded to them that the planning commission did not. The city council has the ability to, if they can make cases for the findings, approve, deny, continue, table. I don't think there's any reason to remand, but that's a personal opinion. But yes, you could continue it or table it, Councilwoman Bybee, because a denial would be.
Would that be a continue? Would that be a table, or would that be the same? Tell me what I.
Continuance is to a date certain council meeting.
Okay.
Whereas a table, when the council votes to put something on the table, it's simply no time certain. So you would put an item at some point in the future to remove the table and then probably hear the item.
Yes, the answer to the question that you're asking is the preference of the planning staff is that it be continued until the second meeting in January. That's the timeline you're looking at.
Oh, until the second meeting in January?
Yes.
Because sewer study, we hope, is coming to us in December or
Yes.
January?
We hope that we can bring the sewer study in some type of format to the city council in a public hearing in December.
So because of public hearings and everything, we would not be able to, legally, it would not be the first in January, it'd be second meeting in January would be?
No, Councilwoman Bubby, the rationale for the second meeting in January is that once the sewer study is adopted or approved as a policy of the city by the city council, planning staff would need an opportunity to look at the math, figure out what the pipe size looks like to get to the interceptor from the parcel in question, and they just need a little bit of time to make an appropriate analysis on the issue.
Okay, so it's a continuance or it's a table? It's a table time certain?
So a continuance is to a time certain, and that is the preference of the planning staff. A tabling is effectively indefinite.
Thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Oh, that'd be me. Chief?
Oh, Mr. Smith,
question
I'm sorry.
for- You wanna-
Currently.
Go ahead. I'll be up next.
Okay.
Doug, I hate to do this to you at the last second here, but as I understood what Mr. Rundle said, is that the concern of the city is that once the sewer study comes out, it could arguably result in a cost to the landowner of several $1 million. And that the city's concern is that we'll have a parcel of land that we have annexed that, because of this sewer study, will cost several $1 million to essentially develop. And that the city doesn't want to have a white elephant out there, sitting out there that's going to cost, it's going to be prohibitively expensive to develop. And that buttressed with Mr. Martini's observation is that meanwhile, we are maintaining a newly annexed road. Is that the summation of your argument?
If you'll indulge me just a minute to summarize, what's going on in the view of planning staff is that without knowing whether or not the infrastructure that is in place that crosses Pyramid and goes down Sparks Boulevard to the interceptor through Kylie Ranch, without knowing whether or not that infrastructure is sufficient to serve both the approved development in Kylie Ranch and this annexed parcel, there's no way for us to know whether or not the applicant is going to be required to pay its proportional share of the infrastructure upgrades associated with the pipeline that's already in the street. Certainly they will have to pay to pull the pipe from the stub that was referenced by Mr. Hummel to their parcel. Without knowing whether or not that infrastructure needs to be upgraded, there's no real way for us to know whether or not the project as proposed will pencil. And so the risk to the city is that this land will come in at the relatively low taxable value of $840, and you will be stuck maintaining a road in perpetuity with no tax increments to support that.
So that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Because as you know, whenever an issue comes into our office, the first thing I ask you is this our problem? In other words, it sounds to me as though the risk, the legal risk, is on the applicant. I mean, yeah, we have some collateral risk in that we have a road out there that we're going to have to maintain with no real taxable income coming in. The taxable income will come in from the annexed property, but without the annexed property, if it's too expensive, it sounds like I'm either missing something, or as Councilman Lawson says, we're betting on the come, in that a lot of this seems to be speculation.
I think that the distinction to be drawn, Mr. Adams, is that there is, of course, legal risk when you talk about whether or not the services need to be provided upon annexation. Certainly, I agree that there is no requirement upon annexation, that sewer be pulled to the parcel. That is absolutely correct. As you saw in Title 13, a study would need to be done to demonstrate that the infrastructure is sufficient, and the developer bears the risk of the cost associated with that. I think the developer, of course, recognizes that and is prepared to bear that expense. The difficulty is that when you leave, I think, the legal risks, you start to look at the practical risks, and the practical risks here are that nobody knows, not us, not the developer, nobody knows whether or not I believe it's an 8-inch pipe that runs by Kylie is sufficient to serve the parcel proposed for annexation and the already approved development in Kylie Ranch. And because of that, there's no way for us to know, what it's going to cost, if anything, to improve that infrastructure. And so the risk to the city is not only that we'll have to maintain that road, which is a legal requirement upon annexation, but that the sewer enterprise fund will be needed to update this infrastructure that's in the road and, frankly, pretty new, right? I mean, it hasn't been built out there at the edge of Kylie, and it's there to support that development. And so what you're looking at potentially is replacing brand new infrastructure to support this development. You might not be. I think what the planning staff is asking for is an opportunity to answer that question and assess what it's really going to cost the city, because it may well be more than $50,000 a year.
But the developer has taken the time to try to pencil this out. The developer is comfortable with whatever fiscal risk it may incur in all of this. It doesn't sound like the city has been able to do that because of a sewer study project that was contracted out in 2015?
Well, 2015, and I believe they're ahead of schedule on getting that report back. But respectfully, I think it's difficult for the developer to be comfortable with the fiscal risk because the developer doesn't know what the fiscal risk actually is.
To assume it.
Well, they say they're willing to assume it, but no developer is going to build something if it doesn't pencil. And there's no way for us to condition them to actually build it no matter what that number comes back at.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I believe in the deepest and highest respect for your legal opinion and your professionalism in your office. I'm just not seeing a compelling legal argument here for us to deny it just yet, but that's just me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question's for the chief. Chief, don't we already provide police service past that items?
Brian Allen, Police Chief, for the record. So, police services past
Highlands Boulevard out Pyramid. We already.
Pyramid Highway is Nevada Highway Patrol. We do.
I'm not talking about the highway. Do we have homes and everything out there? Do we provide?
Yes, we provide services all the way through our current city boundaries, all
so
down
we
to
do.
La
So
Posada,
that means we also provide fire, and we have an agreement with the county to share that. So we already provide those services in that area.
Not that particular lot. We do
No,
not,
I know
but
not
the
that
general
lot.
area.
I'm not
Yes.
I don't
Across
want-
the street from Pyramid Highway, is within the city of Sparks. And we
Okay,
provide
so we do it.
services.
And
Yes.
so that it would just be, we've got a new lot on the left-hand side of the street, and if we have to service,
And we
we're there.
assume whatever risk happens on that lot.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Schmidt?
It's
Go
response
ahead,
time.
get some.
Are there even any homes out there on that lot? My
No.
understanding is it's another raw undeveloped land. So why wouldn't we respond out there either with police or fire unless?
In case of a wildfire.
Unless Ed was having a campfire out there and having a big party.
Well, and that's very probable
Yeah.
too, because Ed likes to go outside the city limits before he has those keggers, but.
Anyway, thank you. That's what I needed. And because I was on a ride along, and I know I went past that. Unless Chief Asher would just take me for a ride.
Or west of Spanish Springs High School that we're responsible for technically also out there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Ayer. That's 800 bare acres right now. There's no houses on that 800 acres, so just.
Yeah, but we're still
thank you.
responsible for
We're still
what
responsible.
happens on that land, yeah.
Thank you, thank you. First off, as we get into this thing, I want to thank staff and the applicant for the wonderful birthday present you gave me to make this decision today. You know, it's and it happens to have to be my last major decision after 15 years and 7 months worth of being a city council. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to make half the people upset that's involved in this. A couple of new things that came on up, and I want to go and explore so I can understand, and one's going to be illegal, so Doug or Jim, you tell me how this goes. Is the 14 acres, the business acres that is in the annexation been already said, where does that 14 acre stand in legalities? Does that have to be in there? Tell me about this, because this is the first time I've heard of that 14 acres is in the master plan already.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you asking on the 14 acres of general commercial within these 2 parcels?
Do we have the right to deny that 14 acres?
Yes, yes.
We annex, we have the right to deny them 14 acres of commercial.
Do you have the ability to deny the annexation? Is that what you're?
No. If we annex the piece of property, do we have the right to deny 14 acres commercial use?
When you annex something, what happens is it comes into the sphere, or into the city, with the equivalent zoning designation from what's on it at the county.
Okay.
In this case, it would be A40. It would not be general commercial. The general commercial designation is the land use designation in the sphere of influence rather than the zoning. And so the answer to your question is that when it comes in, it will require a rezoning, regardless of which scenario you are looking at. And so, yes, you would be able to deny the commercial zoning when it comes forward.
Okay, so for the purposes of annexation, the 14 acres, brought up by Mr. Gord, and commercial is irrelevant. It's not part of the scheme of things because it's not part of annexation. When we annex, if the property was to be annexed, our total liability then is to A40, which staff and everybody agrees, the maximum that we are on the hook for is 2 houses to approve. They could take and put 1 house on each of the 2 parcels, and that's what we're on the hook for, right?
Well, in the staff report, this is convoluted, and I almost have to maybe talk this answer over, but in the staff report, we identified that translation table of A40 and what it permits on that. And there are a number of different uses that would permit beyond what a 2 houses would be. Obviously, if they came in with a very intense request in the sphere of influence, we would resort to the resolution that I mentioned in the staff report that the council adopted, saying you shall obtain sanitary sewer service for any type of intensification. So that's where it kind of comes back to your point.
So, I'm trying to get to what, because I've heard we're out there for $1 million, and I'll talk about that in just a minute for the street. But, staff, the applicant comes in, requests annexation. This A40 is what they're allowed to go by, which could be more than 1 house, but definitely not a subdivision or anything else like that.
Correct.
We would very limited uses that they could do. The city is on the hook at that point to allow them to hook up 2 houses to our sewer system. We're required to provide those services. I mean, we don't have to.
I believe if they did 2 houses, they would be on a septic system.
So it wouldn't even affect the sewer system at all. That they wouldn't even need to go in it, so it'd be irrelevant.
I believe in the sphere of influence, if we hadn't annexed it yet. Is that what you're saying?
I'm trying to think through this whole thing on exactly what we're on the hook for today. If we annex this piece of property.
Okay. So if they
the
were
owners
annexed,
come back and say, okay, they come back with the rezoning and everything else like that. We say denied. You're not going to build anything on this piece of property. What can they come back to us and say, well, we want to hook up to the sewer system for these 2 houses, or do we have to allow them to hook up to that sewer system for 2 houses? Or have the sewer study say we have allocation amount for 2 houses? Because I think, what we've done in practice is probably not what our policy or state law says. In practice, we've gone through this whole thing of doing what is a proposed project, what's the feasibility of it in practice, but annexation doesn't require that. Annexation doesn't require us to go through everything on rezoning and be approved, because I've seen projects here that we've annexed, by the time we come to the zoning, it's a different project. So it doesn't,
So I think there's a lot of moving parts there, and if I miss something, please jump in and stop me so I can address it. But first, you're absolutely correct. State law does not require provision of services at the time of annexation. And so theoretically, yes, it is possible that this land could be annexed and there could be some development out there that is on a septic system. Conversely, there could be development out there that requires, or they request, hooking up to the sanitary sewer system. They would be required to pay 100% of the cost, pulling the pipe from the parcel to the existing stub on the immediate western boundary of Pyramid Highway. The question, as I said before, is what happens to that downstream pipe, if you will. And that's not a question that we can necessarily resolve. We have to use the best information that we have, and the best information that we have, I think, as Mr. Gordon said earlier, is the information that is inside the economic feasibility report that the applicant supplied. As you know, that is it's two scenarios there. The first scenario is the 14 acres of commercial. While it would need a rezone, other than the sewer issue, and I suppose the fire and police, it is difficult for me today to sit here and tell you that there's a real probability that rezoning those 14 acres only to support a commercial use would be a particular problem. On the other hand, the larger project, the project that the applicant favors, on a larger portion of the site, is likely to have more significant impacts to the sewer system, and those are the questions that need to be answered. But again, yes, you are correct that that is a question that the rezoning at the time of the project approval, but when you look at the annexation, I think the point that is trying to be expressed by the staff report is that when you consider annexation, you should consider whether or not the costs to the city serving the parcels versus the expected revenue production of the project are at least neutral. And
not be a problem, because we have all that information. We don't have, a fear of something. Let me ask you a question. Why is that sewer pipe stubbed out to the west side of Pyramid Highway? I'm sorry. I'm trying to get this boil down to exactly what we're looking at and how do we solve the problem.
So long as you keep asking questions, we will keep trying to produce the best person to answer them.
And that would be Mr. Martini on this one, because he's feverishly looking for his answer here.
Okay, so this is the map that Karen presented to you. The property we're talking about for this requested annexation are these two parcels here. The reason the sewer line was extended across Pyramid Highway by the developers of Kylie Ranch North, if you will recall, Karen, is it the Phase 4 handbook? 7. This council has approved development through the Kylie Ranch on the west side of Pyramid. That line supports, it was put there to support that development. You may recall we looked at multifamily in there. There was a proposal by Tanamera at one point, as well as a proposal on the corner by Maverick gas station. So that line is there to support Kylie North and everything that we have promised through the approval of the handbook. It was paid for by the developer of Kylie.
So it was anticipated there would be service on the west side of Pyramid Highway.
There was not at that time.
But there would be anticipated that it was going to be used.
To support Kylie? Yes.
We've mentioned that there's $1 million the city's on the hook on here for improvements of
Highland Ranch Park.
Kylie Ranch Parkway.
Councilman Schmidt, those are not for improvements, those are for maintenance responsibilities.
Maintenance responsibility. Are we not right now under the same situation, but on the other side of the road, is that we've annexed that property, but there's no development, that we're on the hook for maintenance of that street?
We have a small portion adjacent to Kylie North right now at the center line of the road.
It looks like about halfway to the road, we've annexed already, so we're already responsible for half that maintenance.
Just in the intersection, if you can see where the border is.
Well, but the case, we have property that's annexed into the city, but not built on. If there was something that needed to be maintained on that street right now, who's going to pay for it?
We are responsible for a portion.
So
of
we're
it
already
today. Yes.
responsible for half that. So all we're doing is, this is a tough decision, and I don't know if there's. It looks like there's a couple more people who want to talk on the issue.
That's right.
My concern on this issue is protecting the integrity that has been worked very, very hard for many decades to protect, to notify the public what our sphere of influence is, to notify developers of what we're willing to do. We have in the last 15 years annexed, going down the Truckee River, 3,000 acres. And we came back as a council and said, you know what, we have enough information now that annexation we probably shouldn't have done. And the council had the courage to say, we're going to give that on up. So I think if the council has the integrity, and I'm going to assume past as well as future councils, to look and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have done this. It doesn't pencil on out. And at that point, we had the developers backing on it, that it wasn't a good thing. If the developers came forward in another couple of months and said, hey, look, this thing's going to cost us way too much money here, we're not going to annex, we're going to go back to the cheap property rates of the county and work with the county on things, I think the council has the ability to go ahead and say, we don't need to have this land. But to me, the overarching thing on this is to protect the integrity of what we said our sphere of influence is, what we've given notice for decades to the community where we're going to expand and where we're not going to expand. We need to take that into consideration. That this is, as I think someone said earlier, the city of Sparks is easy to work with. We don't do those spheres of influence just to go in and say, hey, we want to gobble up this land. We have some integrity, why we do it, and the notices. I'm uncomfortable in that aspect that if our total liability is two sewer hookups here, plus maintenance of the street undetermined, I'm not seeing that as an issue that we can't resolve. And so I'm looking at this point, unless I have other information, the rest in the public hearing portion of it, to say that we should probably move this on. Let the developer submit a set of plans and let's coordinate with the sewer study. And if the sewer study comes back that there's no way we can put anything on this line, then I think staff, we as a council, the future council, needs to dedicate money on what do we need to do to fix this problem, because we got a much bigger issue coming, and this is not going to be $1 million fix. This is going to be a $20, $30, $40, $50 million fixed if we come back that we can't do what we say we promised we're going to do, and then look at annexation and say what is it going to take to do that future. So thank you again, and appreciate it.
Thanks.
Again, for me, I don't understand why we can't wait until January. For me, we're so close to having these numbers, and I think not only the benefit of the city and the liabilities and our sewer lines and everything we do and the way we conduct business in the city, including what our master plan is telling us to do for services, which does include fire and police. And if police are out there, that's fine. But again, we're back to response times. So fire can get there, that's fine. But what is the response time? And we owe it to businesses and to individuals that are in those annexations and in our sphere of influence. That's part of the service that we provide as a city. The timeline of waiting until we have those numbers is not only for me and the city and our liability, but it's for the developers, because then also, hey, we've got plenty of capacity, so that 200 multifamily units that you want really ultimately to do is doable. Today, you don't know that. So would you really develop this if you only had 2 houses? Or 14 acres of general commercial, maybe. But if it was only 2 houses and something very limited based on the sewer, which I'm very optimistic that the sewer is not going to come back with that limited capacity, because I agree with Councilman Schmidt, I would hope that we are able to do that. But I want to know, and I want you to know, so that we all know that, hey, this is what our capacity is, here's what your cost is going to be, here's what the lines are going to cost you, and we can pencil it out, and you can develop what you want to do, and I just feel that there's no reason. Today, I cannot support making a decision today. I'm in favor of tabling this, so I'll see what my colleagues want to do, but I feel very strongly.
And then we're going to public comment.
Quick comment. I'm just looking at this through the goggles of 50,000 new jobs are coming to us, and we're already missing the boat on tax money. Anything that gets us quicker to market, I'm all in favor of. So I think the risk is minimal to the city, and we can always de-annex it later on if we find out. If our sewer's to that much capacity, we got bigger problems, folks. We got not a $50 million problem. I think we have a $500 billion problem. We got a huge problem that we're going to have to build a bigger sewer plant, bigger pipes, whatever it takes to accommodate growth. So, like I said, I think it's a minimal risk, and we can always say no in the future. We're on step 1 of 10, and we can say no all the way through the rest of the steps.
Hey, having said that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone in the public want to speak to this? Have one speaking card. Ardina Perry, come on up. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. For the record, Ardina Perry. What I wanted to say was I was down today as much for this as for anything else that we were doing. I love the way our council's handling that. Even the ones that I disagree with, I'm so impressed with how we are as a council handling this. I would only, and I'm down here at the request of some other people who have deep concerns about this. Not related to me, I'm up in the vistas, but we really, at some point, and this is with tremendous respect to Ed too, but at some point, as Gino brought up, we have to stop and look, what is our capacity before we continue to annex? I mean, to be facing a challenge is wonderful. I mean, to be willing to go forward and say, yeah, I think we can do this. But I think at some point to continue to annex until we have these hard numbers in front of us, saying, yes, we can do this, I think that's what's fair. And of course, I am here because a lot of the people out in that area are concerned. They're already having some issues with what they consider slow return. So I just think it would make us a little more believable, or whatever we want to be here, if we had the numbers in the can first. And they agree, they'll probably come back that we can do it. But we can't keep playing Monopoly with real houses here. We've got to find out what our resources are. That's what I was here for. Thank you.
And good job, guys.
Okay, anyone else under public comment? Okay, seeing no further public comment, I'll bring it back to council for action. Questions of the staff or applicant? Ms. Bybee.
No questions. I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
Do we have questions
Go.
first?
I asked for questions, they didn't answer.
I'm going to make a motion that we table a decision on this annexation to the second meeting in January.
Do you have a second? Oop.
That may be very well what you intended to do, so with all respect, did you mean to continue it to the meeting in January? A tabling would mean we'd have to take it off the table at the meeting in January.
I'm sorry. You were throwing continuing and table back and forth at me. Yes, I did. I meant a continuance with time, certain date to our second meeting in January. Thank you, Mr. Rendell.
Do you have a second? Okay, no second, so the motion dies for the lack of a second. Motion, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's, an honor to have in my ward probably the most acreage that's available for construction to the community. And I've actually had asked less than 8 months ago that we look at those 800 acres that the chief brought on up to have de-annexed in the city, because I don't think they're appropriate as they were in 2004. I'm very proud of the decisions that the council has made over the last 15 years. I know this is difficult, but this is my ward, an expansion of my ward, and I appreciate the opportunity to go ahead and make a motion. And I'm not sure if I can make a complete motion without some staff help here. I'll make the motion that we're simply go ahead and accept the annexation, but I believe we need to have some verbiage on findings, and I don't have any findings in my file. So is there anything that I need to add to the motion to accept the annexation? If not, I'll make that motion that we accept the annexation.
Do you have a second? Mr. Smith?
Before I do, I am going to second this motion, but I want to point out the conversation that we had at council today. We seem to do that a lot when we're really struggling with something, but this is Ward 5. Mr. Schmidt is still a council member, and I've always traditionally supported the council members of a particular ward, what their proposals are. So I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Mr. Lawson, I'm sorry.
And
discussion, we have a, wait. We have a motion to approve by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Smith. Discussion, Mr. Lawson.
So this is a tough decision, and I'm glad that we did talk through it very well. But once again, it goes back to me, we can deny this at any time in the future, and we get, as I think you used the term, several bites at the apple. And if you want to spend your money in Sparks, I want to help you spend your money in Sparks. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just want to make sure, I know legal was in the middle of the conversation. I want to make sure that I'm clear. It's my old man's memory at this point that with annexation, we have to point to specific findings in the motion. My motion was to accept the annexation, but I don't have anything that shows me any findings in the report. So I need to make sure that we're clear on the motion is a legal motion.
You are correct that there are 4 findings associated with the annexation. They are required by the municipal code as part of the alternative process for annexing property. 3 of the 4, I think if you consult your staff report, resolve in favor of the annexation, or are at least neutral in that it is contiguous, it is voluntary, it was noticed, and that it's inside the sphere of influence, although not inside the annexation program, because as it was explained to you, it has expired. I do not believe that the findings are necessarily affirmative in that you need to find that all of these things are met. I think that they need to be considered. If you consult the language of the municipal code, what it says is that the council, when considering an annexation, or the planning commission, as the case may be, shall consider these issues. And when you look at finding A2, although there were concerns laid out for you in terms of existing infrastructure, police and fire, whether or not it represents a logical extension of the municipal boundary, certainly there are other components to A2 upon which you could base your decision, and I think you could legally say that on the balance you find that the parcel is appropriate for annexation by the council.
Do I have to include in my motions findings A1 through A3 that all conditions have been discussed and met, or I'm just good at saying we approve the annexation?
I think that that's probably a formality in terms of the actual inclusion in your motion. If you want to do that, also fine.
If legal is fine with it, I'm fine with it. I don't want to muddy the water. I just don't want to have an illegal motion on the table. So, and like I was just with the council and staff and everything else like that, I don't think for me this is project specific. I don't think that if Mr. Hamilton or anyone brought in a project anywhere that's in our sphere of influence right now, that this is a this is an integrity thing that I think we've set out there in the community, and I don't want to get out in the community that we're going to, backtrack on ourselves. If we want to backtrack, I think we send the message we want to de-annex properties, and we start on that process right now. So I just want to make sure it's clear that it's not this project specific. It's with the integrity of the annexation process and the sphere of influence that we have set out in the past. Thank you.
More discussion? Okay, seeing none, please vote. Okay, it passes 3-1. I need to make a statement here now. I've not done this very much or at all, but I'm going to consider, I have 10 days to consider a veto of this particular item. I'm going to discuss with community development in conjunction with my attorney. Like I said before, Mr. Garrett made some very, very, very good arguments, but so has my staff. And I think down a long time ago, we discussed something called concurrency, where the county went crazy whenever we tried to approve anything because we didn't know whether we had the capacity to build those things. So this to me is kind of a concurrency issue. I think we might have the capacity to build this, but I don't know that. So we're all talking about, we may not have, we may be in big trouble. We may be in big trouble. So let's add a little bit more now so that we're more in trouble down the road. Why don't we want to wait 2 months to know for sure if we can build this and the capacity's there? I know Mr. Hamilton builds good stuff. I know Garrett Gordon's an honest person and has put together a very, very good case. So I do not like to do this. I've never done it before on a project. But I'm going to take the 10 days and talk with community development and my attorney, and I will get back to you. Okay? Okay, let's move down the comments from the public. Okay, comments from the city council and city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 items. The first is an announcement. The following committee appointments are available: Sparks Parks and Recreation Department, 1 member for a partial term ending June 30th of 2017. Persons interested in serving on the committee should complete a community service application available from the city clerk's office, or you may also apply online at the city's website, www.cityofsparks.us. Click on City Services on the webpage, then click on Volunteering, Get Involved, and then you would click on Fill Out a City of Sparks Volunteer Application. Applications will be accepted until the close of business on Monday, October 31st. Second item, Mr. Mayor, we're approaching the holiday season, and so we have in the past contemplated not having a second meeting in December because of the Christmas and New Year's holiday period. And so with the meeting actually going to be falling on a Tuesday, I am suggesting that unless there is objection, we have no business that we're aware that we need to do on that date specifically, and be looking to cancel the December 27th council meeting. And then we would do any necessary redevelopment business either in the first meeting of December, or we would continue, we would just not bring it forward until the meeting in January. So unless I hear objections, that is going to be my plan for your agenda on the 27th. Thank you, I'm done.
I just wanted to thank Tracy, and I guess Francina's gone. Pumpkin Palooza yesterday was phenomenal. The rest of you guys should have been there. It was, I brought my pumpkin from the beauty contest, raced in the Derby. It's just the kind of event we like to see in downtown Sparks. And the mayor and I were commenting on the weather was perfect. The crowds were great. I left at 3 o'clock and they were still lined up for all the games. really, really good job. And I really would like to express an incredible amount of thanks to the amount of volunteers. I don't know how many you had, but it was a lot of volunteers. And that event would not happen without community involvement and the volunteers who made that happen too. So just thank you to all of you. It was a great event. Come next year if you missed it this year. Bring your kids or grandkids.
Same for me. It's fun. It's a fun event to go down to. You just sit around and watch kids doing funny things like they always do. And some were happy, some were crying because they lost. I mean, it's just all kinds of emotions, and there's all kinds of families and all their kids. And even some people from out of town come to this thing. So it's a good event. Anybody else? Okay, see no further business. We're adjourned.